getting to zero. And the autographed copy sticker is actually covering up one of the, I kind of just got the point of these circles yesterday when I stared through the sticker. But tell me just, well, actually, I want to start with saying, so this is a book about how to work through conflict in your high stakes relationships. By high stakes, you mean any intimate relationship, family.
Yeah, business partner, family, intimate partner, where it counts the most, like if it doesn't go well, like it's going to be really, really bad.
Right. I love how you talk about that because Michelle, who's here, my fiance, and I have been talking about like doing a marital agreement. And one of the reasons around it is every argument you have over dishes once you're married, there's all this baggage and weight on top of it that
Yeah.
wasn't there when you're just dating,
Yep.
which is like mortgage and, children and job and future and growing old together. And there's so
Yeah.
much pressure.
Yeah.
So Michelle and I, like many couples who fall in love, had like a pretty blissful 6 months, which was a great run.
Yeah. It's
Um, yeah, I mean, pretty long run of getting along. And then as I was joking in the green room, we've had some conflict every minute, every day, ever since.
uh-huh.
So, most of us, from my ego's point of view, that seems like a bad thing. How do you regard conflict in high stakes relationships? What the
Yeah.
heck do we do?
Yeah. You're not alone there. A lot of people think conflict is bad and it must be the partner. I picked the wrong person because we're fighting all the time or we can't seem to connect anymore. People mistakenly think that. And what's really going on is this incredible opportunity actually to deepen and get to know each other better and learn about ourselves. And so conflict is just a growth opportunity.
Yeah, and that's sort of easy to say, but you've actually kind of practiced it in your own relationship with your wife, and you talk about that in your book. So maybe I love, I've known you for a long time, but not super well. And reading these stories in this book, I was like kicking myself because I've gone through different stories, but similar kind of, uh, opening up and softening
Hmm.
experiences. So you talked about your dating life and then eventually with your wife. Like, how did you, and a lot of how we engage in conflict, as you describe, comes from our father or mother or family life. What was your personal kind of story with conflict?
Yeah. So I grew up in a very, what on the outside looked like a high functioning, healthy family. And yet behind closed doors, there just wasn't a lot of conflict. And when conflict happened, uh, there was no apologies. No one repaired anything. There was no like, hey, oops, my bad. Yeah, I did raise my voice at you, son, or any of that stuff. The download I got was, pretty minimal. Like a lot of people, a lot of people either grow up in families that are pretty aggressive and loud, or pretty quiet and kind of, oh, we don't do conflict.
Right.
And I was a sensitive little kid, and I got trained out of my feelings through what I call the boy code, where we condition little boys to not feel and not be sensitive and not be themselves. And they got
To
to kind
not
of,
show weakness. Right.
yeah, exactly. They got to toughen up and kind of fit in and perform and achieve and win and all that stuff. And that was the family I grew up in. So I repressed all of my emotions. And so when things got hard in relationships as a young adult, like late adolescence and early 20s, anything uncomfortable, a woman would bring up, hey, I have some feelings over here. It doesn't feel good. I don't, what's going on with you? I would just push her away, talk to the hand, kind of like, I don't want to deal with you. And I was drinking a lot and doing a lot of drugs at the time. And so when doing some sports, and so when I pushed her away, I felt relief. I felt better. So I concluded, it must be her. So I always had it that it was the woman that was creating the problems.
And blame
And
is such a huge thing, right? In
yeah, totally. And I just
perpetuating
kept
conflict.
reinforcing it, like it's her fault.
Right.
She's the one that's needy. She's got all these emotions. And all she was wanting to do was connect with me and like work through the kind of crunchy stuff. And I was having no part of it. Right. So I rinse and repeat for like 10 years. And then I woke up one day breaking up with a woman in a Whole Foods parking lot, this amazing person who we had a lot of good good stuff together. But she brought up the conflict stuff, and I didn't, I just was like, no. And so I fired her in this parking lot and realized I was doing the same thing I was always doing with women, where I was firing them, making them wrong. And I was like, I kind of reflected, like, maybe I'm the problem here.
Right.
And that's when
Yeah,
really,
'cause you're getting old enough to say, like, rinse and repeat. If this has happened again and again and again, maybe what all these relationships, the problem they have in common is
is me.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a very shut down, emotionally unavailable young man. And I was smart enough somewhere inside of me to recognize that. And that was a massive shift. Like, my life's never been the same when I finally looked in the mirror and said, oh, maybe I'm the problem. Because I thought, gosh, if I'm the problem, I can actually control that. I can do something about that. And that's when I moved to Boulder, Colorado, and enrolled in graduate school at Naropa and started to study myself and other people.
It's so powerful because in Buddhism, which you've practiced and studied, we talk about the neurosis, like the mud being the
Yeah,
fertilizer for the
totally.
awakening, the flower, the lotus. But
Yeah,
that's actually it. Like, your obstacle became your entire life's path.
yeah,
This is
absolutely.
what you're
Like,
offering. You have a
yeah,
relationship school, and I mean, it's unbelievable what you've done. And I was saying in the green room before, like, how is this stuff not taught in, like, junior high or middle school? Like home ec,
oh, man.
you have home ec. We need relationship school
Yeah,
everywhere.
we had a home ec, we had auto mechanics, we had math and all the classes, and it's like, and I was pretty checked out in school. I didn't learn a whole lot. I didn't have any really inspiring teachers, but I sure could have used this class because I felt really alone. I felt really insecure. I didn't know how to talk about what was really going on inside, and that lasted for the way until I was 29. That's a long time to live feeling like, okay, I have friends, I can date women, but I feel completely alone inside.
Right. And so what happened after the parking lot
So I
relationship
moved,
firing?
yeah, so I moved to Boulder, and then I really started enrolled in group therapy, individual therapy, started meditating for the first time in my life. Met amazing meditation teachers who we have in common, and I started being with learning how to be with my feelings and feel my feelings and talk about them in relationship with another person. I met my wife at Naropa. We started dating. She was a couple years ahead of me, and you were talking about the kind of honeymoon stage for you, and for me, we didn't really have one. We just were like two budding psychotherapists, and it was like a fight right from the start. And we just got into our stuff. But she was the first woman I felt like really safe with to kind of start to crack
To
open
do
my
that,
wall and let in.
because you had a common language too, and you're
Yeah,
both studying. That's so
totally.
powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, it was super powerful. So we were both growing together and learning about ourselves and learning how to help others. And it was very liberating because I started to just the weight started to lift off my shoulders and the shackles around my heart, and I
Hmm.
started to let her in, and
Hmm.
yeah, it was amazing.
So when conflict, I mean, what I'm really appreciating about this book is it's not just like philosophy. Like, there's actual techniques.
Yeah,
Like, my fiance Michelle here is from Ecuador, so I'm like doing Duolingo almost every day trying to learn Spanish, and it's like I feel like I'm working hard and I'm learning a little bit every
yeah,
day. This
yeah,
is how this book feels. Like, it feels super practical,
yeah.
which I really appreciate because I've read, I am Buddhist and I've read a lot of good books, but there's actually things in here we can practice together.
Nice.
So what, I guess, like, how do you it's such a huge subject, but conflict seems to be like kind of our path. Like, we love each other, we have a good time, we have a lot of sweet times together, but conflict is like constantly arising. So I mean, it's such a sort of dumb question, but what do we do when conflict arises with someone we love, like,
Yeah,
80 times a day?
yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge you and your partner for you have an added challenge, which is a cultural layer of language and also coming from different countries. And that's just another layer that people don't kind of realize when they sign up for a kind of intercultural marriage.
Hmm.
It's just another layer of complexity, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when
Once
you
in a
get into,
while, I'll say something and she'll be like, "Of course." I'll be like, "God, why are you being so like callous about this. And she's like, what do you mean? Like, of course it's claro,
Uh-huh.
in Spanish, which is kind of a very common, I
Yeah.
think, friendly thing to say.
Like
But the
claro
way
que
it
sí,
comes
yeah.
out in English, I'm like, wow, that felt really brusque.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's another layer. So, I think that there's a few tips here just in terms of how does a couple who's arguing or disagreeing or just feeling crunchy together frequently, how do they deal? Well, the very first thing we've already talked about, which is to have the mindset that those kind of interactions aren't a problem in and of themselves. They're uncomfortable. We don't like them. They feel bad, of course,
Yeah.
but they're not a problem in the big picture. They're actually all of that's an opportunity for you to start to learn about yourselves and each other and become a better team. Right. So if we have that mindset and that attitude, we can both relax that, okay, this is uncomfortable. I don't like it. And this is part of a long term partnership when two people really care about each other. So
Yeah.
mindset, number
I
one,
think
right?
I've been really juvenile. I'm 47. I've been really juvenile in that when I have a lot of conflict in relationship, you write about this too, but you're like, when you're talking about it, you're like 20 years younger. So I'm behind. But
Mm,
there's some level of like, I want to get out. Like it's easier to be
yeah,
alone than to have this
absolutely.
constant conflict. And by constant conflict, it's like we still love each other and have a good time.
Yeah,
I don't want to put this in some sort of, like, you're really clear, like if it's an abusive relationship, there's guardrails here. But if it's just
absolutely.
everyday conflict over who did the dishes or why didn't you say thank you,
Yeah.
yeah, how do we stick with it and kind of go deeper instead of running away?
Well, the good news is you're learning, you're interested now. It's got your attention, right?
Yeah,
And
both
where
of
a
us.
lot of
Yeah.
couples are like, "Hey, can I just please get back to the honeymoon stage? Can I just get away from these uncomfortable conversations and feelings?" Which is, I think, a very limited approach because you're gonna ultimately keep wanting the fantasy and not be in reality, and then you're gonna burn out,
Right.
right? So if you have the attitude that, "Okay, this is a learning opportunity, let's get in there, and find out who we are together," great. You could be an incredibly powerful couple long term if you guys can keep figuring this out, right, together. And by the way, it's not gonna my wife and I still have conflict all the time or frequently, so it's not like it goes away when you reach a certain level. You just become a little more efficient at working through it, and then you start to understand each other's triggers better. She starts to understand where you come from in your family,
Right.
and vice versa, right? Because all of our family unresolved relationship shit starts surfacing, and it's a lot
But there are like things in here, like the radical notion of listening until
until they feel understood.
they feel understood. Yeah.
Not until you think you
Luther.
understand them. That was the mistake I made.
Yeah.
It's until they say, "Yeah, I feel understood."
Yeah. And then, I get this from the Buddhist tradition, but it's also in here, like the radical notion that we could accept some blame or
Mhm.
responsibility,
Yeah.
and own something. But you talk about it in sort of, there's a map, like there's a stages, and I mean techniques makes it sound too sort of fake, but like you can actually go through steps. Do you and your wife actually kind of go through those steps still
It's
today?
more fluid now, and we're
Yeah.
always updating and refining, but Lufu is sort of the basic framework of listening, and then Shore, is sort of a speaking, um, reminder, like a few steps on how to speak to someone, and the basic framework is there just living and breathing inside of our marriage all the time,
So
right?
maybe you could walk us through Lufu and Shore. Is that
Sure.
Would you be willing to do that?
Yeah, for sure. So Lufu, just to make it more clear, it's LUFU, and it's an acronym that just stands for listen until they feel F understood you. LUFU. It's just easy to remember, right? And if we make a commitment that I'm going to LUFU you, as we call it here at the relationship school, I'll go first. I'll be the listener. Because again, in a common everyday conflicts, someone has to just be the bigger person and be like, okay, I'm gonna stop trying to prove my point here and I'm gonna listen actually to what it's like to be you.
And that's the notion of getting to zero, that you're kind of, you get up in conflict, you get up to 6 or 7 or 8, and maybe a big, huge, crazy fight is 9 or 10 or something where you're yelling at each other or
Yeah.
storming off. but that you can de-escalate.
Yeah, zero means how do we get back to a good place? Good place is zero. Baseline should be a place where, for the most part, 80% of the time in your home with this person, you're feeling like you're in a good place. Like, hey, we're cool, right?
Yeah.
And there's going to be the inevitable snags where we go from a 5 to a 10 or a 8 or a 3. But it's like we want to be living our lives at zero. We're all already so stressed out, right? We don't need another stressor, which is our intimate partnership. That will be stressful at times, but we don't want that to be the most stressful thing in our life. That's a bummer.
And there's actually maybe like -1, -2, where if we're like at zero, we can show up for the other person when we see they're stressed out, or we can do something kind for them, or check in with, we can actually de-stress other areas of their life as a team.
Yeah, yeah. I just call that zero. And you're going to be more effective at work or in your creativity, or with your partner, being there for them, showing up for them for sure when you're more at a zero, right? So LUFU has like 8 steps. I don't maybe need to, it could take us a while to go through each one in detail, but the base, I'll give you a couple, okay, of the 8 steps. One is what Waylon talks a lot about, which is presence. The more present you are, the better your listening chops are going to be. And it's hard to be present when you're triggered. That's just a fact, right? But the whole practice of LUFU is like a meditation where it can actually bring you more into presence, more into the front part of your brain, more into your body, so that the other person feels like you're actually there listening instead of waiting your turn or kind of freaked out, blaming. So presence is like step 1, and then curiosity, step 2. We've got to be curious. If we lose curiosity, it's going to be very hard for the other person to feel understood. It's going to be just hard for us to listen because we're kind of waiting our turn, right?
Right.
And a couple really huge movers in the LUFU process. If you want to de-escalate conflict fast, 2 of the things you can do that are very quick. Let's call them 3 things. Take responsibility for your part. I did this thing. I didn't text you back. I raised my voice. I was a jerk. Yes, I didn't do the dishes, whatever. Own it, right? That's going to calm the other person down immediately if you own it. And then you want to say, and it makes sense that you felt blank, which is empathizing, right? Because I did that thing. So you empathize with their experience. And then I snuck something in there, which is, it makes sense. Just that makes sense, or 3 words. And I call that validation. We want the other person's upset feelings to make sense to us, given how we act sometimes. So when I raise my voice and my wife gets scared or shuts down or contracts a little bit, I say things like, I raised my voice, and that's owning. It makes sense. You got scared or felt upset, right? And I can only imagine, then I try to empathize even more. I can only imagine what that is like for you sometimes, especially when you're just trying to do X, Y, and Z. And also, I know you come from a family where your dad raised his voice sometimes. And so it brings up all that kind of memory in your body. And, and then she's going to feel way more like I'm with her, right? Versus it's not that big of a deal. I didn't raise my voice, right? The defend, justify. It's like that goes nowhere.
Right. Yeah. It's so simple and kind of obvious once you put it out there, but we typically do a little of that maybe, but a lot of the opposite. I keep thinking of that scene in The Matrix where I think Keanu Reeves is like, I need guns, lots of guns. Like the second argument starts, you start marshaling all your arguments and resentments and throwing them at the person,
Yeah. You never, that's when it all comes out. Yep.
Yeah. So LUFU. So, and then they can take their turn, right? And listen to you.
Ideally. Now, some of us choose partnerships where we're with someone who has no interest in learning this stuff or thinks they listen fine and just wants to continue to defend themselves. And that's just really good information, right? It's like, oh, look who I'm with. I'm with someone who kind of doesn't want to be a team player here.
I guess sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's really painful. And I always encourage people, if that continues and the person continues to show unwillingness, it's time to move on from those kind of relationships.
Yeah, that's a key question I had, is that, as long as you're both willing to try, you can kind of, if you have some guidance and path forward, you can kind of handle anything. Like there's that, you mentioned indestructible. There's this feeling of like, or invincible. I think you say indestructible. Like there's this feeling you can handle anything if you can handle conflict.
That's right. I mean, you're so much more resilient to together and alone if you can handle the adversity that relationship brings, or triggers bring.
Yeah, I love that. And then so do you think on some level, like sure conflicts arise, but on some level your reference point almost becomes zero instead of like 5 or 6. Like you
Yeah.
just start habitually, you get good at it together. It's like playing it's like a give and go basketball play. You've practiced enough. You
Yep.
kind of know how to, okay, I'm going to own some of this. I'm going to empathize. I'm going to listen, be curious. We'll
Yeah.
trade roles maybe.
I like that.
She or
Exactly.
he is willing to show up equally.
Yeah. Hey, I've sort of it seems like you're feeling a bit understood. Would you be willing to try to understand me now, honey?
Right.
Like, again, ideally there's this ping pong kind of back and forth where we're going to show up for each other. Like when you choose partnership, sorry, you don't get to choose to just keep doing your own thing all the time
Right.
and reacting in your own way. It's like, no, you chose team over me. You chose we over me, right? So
Yeah.
there's a whole new set of rules that need to be like acknowledged and honored when you move into we territory. It's a much steeper path, I think.
Yeah. In the
Than
book,
getting
it's not
people
just
to do.
we over me, though. You say, like, what is it? Something of 3.
Standing for three.
What is it?
Standing for three.
Standing for 3. So there's me, there's you, and then there's us.
Exactly.
I
And
love
I think
that. That's so great.
yeah, thanks. It's an important frame because I think that one of the primary issues people have in relationship is they think it's win-lose. Like
Yeah.
I can only be in this relationship if I compromise and sacrifice who I am and my integrity. That's how a lot of people have it set up. And I'm saying, no. A good, strong, powerful relationship is when you have your own back and you get to take a stand for your own success and who you are and your integrity.
Yeah.
And you're taking a stand for them and their success and their integrity. And you're taking a stand for the two of you together. Like that's a really becomes really indestructible, like solid when two people can get on board with that kind of mindset and mentality.
Oof. It's so that's so attractive, that notion. Because I think of John Donne's poem, like, if
No
any
man,
island is the less, I am the less. Like the never
right.
sent to know who the belt holds for, it holds for thee. Like if my partner is losing and I'm winning, we are losing.
Yeah, we are exactly. You nailed it. We are losing. Like I have a saying: if it doesn't work for my wife, but it kind of works for me, then it's not going to work for us. Therefore, it's not going to work for me either.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So it has to work for her to work for us, and vice versa.
And this standing for 3 means that you're not, as you already said, but I'm slower. You're not sublimating your own needs to the we or
In service of other, right?
to the other.
That's more the codependent stance is, I'm here for you, but you're not here for me.
Uh-huh. So I often am like that. So I love doing nice things. I feel like we're very different people. And Michelle is right here. She can speak for herself. But I love doing little nice things. It's one of my joys in relationships.
Yeah.
And like she just served me hot water and I didn't ask because I'm in an interview and I'm committed here. And that's like a little kindness. And those little kindnesses to me are like everything. And I love that, where you're always thinking about the other person, supporting them and yourself.
Yeah.
And you're being a team player. Like we have a dog, you have children. Like we all have work, we're helping each other show up for our work or our responsibilities. But what if I feel like I'm often this person where I'm like, I'm doing all these nice little things and trying to show up for you and your stuff, but you don't care about me.
Yeah, that's common.
That's codependent on me.
It is, but codependence is a strong label, so we won't use that yet.
Oh, okay.
I just threw it out there, but that's more like, let's just say that starts to play out in your marriage. Well, you're going to eventually resent her, right? And the resentment is a sign that you're over giving and over functioning.
I never resent her. I'm incredibly
right.
Yeah.
My ass.
No attachment.
Yeah. So the resentment, the great thing, people often think resentment's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing because it's feedback to you that you're over functioning, overextending, overdoing, and not standing for 3 again, and not just relaxing and expecting reciprocation or mutuality, right?
My response to that would be, well, what if I want our relationship to be full of little kindnesses? Don't I just need to get her to invest more in little kindnesses?
No, because that's you trying to change her
Right.
and
But we
trying to
still
change
have to,
the
like you said 5 minutes ago, and Michelle was out of the room conveniently, but like, um, you know, um, we have to show up for each other. We both have to be committed to being team players.
Well, again,
Maybe
half
I'm
is
misusing that.
interesting language, right?
Yeah.
Ideally,
half.
it's a commitment, agreement, and it's if it starts to feel like a have to, people tend to not like obligations, right?
Right.
But if they're inspired to intrinsically and they understand, gosh, this is actually going to be good for me too. Because look, another thing we're not just another layer here we're not talking about that I feel is important to mention at this stage is the attachment styles in a relationship. Our relational blueprint creates kind of like what we do under stress in a relationship, and there's two main styles: seeking and avoiding, right? And under stress, when you two are fighting, one of you probably leads the conversation to try to get back to zero or back to a good place. And one of you kind of like pulls away and withdraws and retreats.
Yeah. Big surprise since I have a talk show. I'm the talker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Your attachment style is more on the anxious ambivalent, and hers might be more insecure avoidant, which again, no big deal. These labels just help us try to understand and have compassion for each other versus put each other in boxes. It's just like, oh, this is what we do. This is our pattern. This is very common. This is so normal. This is like the relationship pattern under stress. One person pursues and one person kind of retreats. That's the deal. And every couple has to go, how are we going to deal with this is our nervous system imprint. This is what we do under, how are we going to deal with this?
I want to make it better. I want to make it better. I want to make it better. And she wants to again, you can speak for yourself, but process, I think often like kind of
have some time
be
to
quiet.
process, right?
What's that?
To process on her own.
Yeah.
Yeah, that and ideally you're giving her the space she needs, but she's also not taking days or weeks on end to quote process, because that's threatening to you. That's not cool. Like I always encourage couples to have a 24-hour agreement that we never let something that's unfinished go for longer than 24 hours before at least addressing it or starting to address it. Because it's just threatening to usually one person. Like too much silence, people read into that. It feels scary, it feels threatening.
And so it's sort of like the Buddha's middle way. Like maybe I regard communicating about awkward or hard things as a positive, but maybe I could take it easy a bit. And she needs to process and be quieter, but she can also not, commit to communicating about it at some point.
Yeah. In other words, you could relax into your anxiety and breathe through it and go meditate for a little bit on that and just kind of keep giving her space and be with yourself and your fear or anxiety or whatever's there.
Right.
She could, push herself to come back sooner, to use words sooner, because she knows that's good for you. Mm-hmm. And you're giving her space because that's good for her. And both of you stretch to accommodate the other person's kind of way, right?
Love that. And again, it's that standing for three, that I'm standing up for her. I want her to win. I want me to win. And I want us to win. Yeah. She wants us to win and me to win and her to win. So we're aligned in trying to, I don't know if figure it out is the right way to put it, but
yeah, find your way through to back to zero, right? Back to a good place.
Right. Getting to zero. Right. So can you talk about SURE, or is that too quick?
No, sure. Sure. SURE stands for speak honestly and openly to repair effectively. So it's just, again, a nerdy way of trying to help a person remember, okay, I want to speak honestly and openly in order to repair effectively. And the whole book, really, Zero, is about the getting back to a good place is not the conflict itself is not the problem. And this is researched. It's the coming back and owning up to our part and getting back to a good place, what I call repair. A lot of people call repair or reconnection. That's where you want to put your emphasis. It's not on, okay, we shouldn't fight. It's how are we going to deal once, like a little bit after the fight? What are we going to do? You want to get your response time and recovery time good, because that's what builds a secure attachment over time, is how quickly you can come back and kind of fix it and get better, right, or get back to a better place, right? So SURE is saying, all right, I'm going to speak in a way that has us repair faster, right? And a couple tips there are, in the book, I have 13 reminders before you even open your mouth, right? because a lot of people just start talking and they're not like reflecting. And I think it's important to, before you open your mouth, to like just reflect a little bit. So I just have a few suggestions there. And sure is like, okay, 8 steps there again. Presence. I want to be leading with ownership. If I'm going to speak, it's not blame. You did, you said. It's I did, I said.
Hey, I
Oops.
realized I was being speedy and I came through here
Yeah.
kind of aggressively. I didn't understand I was doing that, but I see that.
Yeah. And again, I'm going to empathize as soon as I can. And I imagine the impact on you was, because I was speedy, I imagine the impact on you was you felt pressured, you felt anxious, you felt like up against a wall, and that must have sucked for you.
Right.
Right. So I'm speaking with ownership, and then I'm trying to I'm just taking responsibility for what I did or didn't do. And that's the essence of Shore, right? And then there's a few other things of like, how do we, what kind of agreements are we going to make in the future? What was the lesson here about myself that, oh, I did that thing again where I kind of moved too fast. Oops. Gosh, this is really hard for me, honey. I do that a lot. I know it impacts you negatively. I'm going to keep working on it. Like we're just,
It's
and I'm
so
not,
good.
and none of my language is, well, you never, you always. It's just not, I'm just not doing that.
It's so good because I think, you're not avoiding conflict. I mean, this is so obvious for you, but to say this to you is silly, but we're not avoiding conflict. We're engaging in all the misunderstandings but
Yeah.
we're not exacerbating it. We're not making it even worse. And I've had this moment I've had many of these moments. I hope Michelle has it many times in this relationship. And I should invite her on at some point if people want to stick around to ask something. But where I'm like, we got through this and I feel more relaxed and more powerful, like
Hmm.
for the standing for 3. Like I feel like our relationship got through this.
Nice.
And even if it wasn't all pretty, now I know we can handle that kind of thing.
That's huge, man. That's
Yeah.
building resilience right there. Cause you're now, you have just a little more confidence. Like, wow, we did it. I did it.
Yeah.
Whew, we can do this, right? It gives you confidence to take the next step for the next big conflict or challenge.
And obviously we've had the opposite where we like run into the same exact thing again and again and again and again and again, where you're like,
Yeah.
it's not, maybe that's not the opposite because it's not like going over 10 or something, but it's like, you're
It's
like,
so
well,
frustrating, right?
yeah, we're not finding our way to 0 through this.
Yeah, and it's always a sign if you're repeating a pattern and you kind of butting heads like you're suggesting there over and over and you can't get anywhere. That's, sometimes we do need to hire a coach, a counselor, a therapist, a guide, have a friend sit with us while we try
Yeah.
to figure it out. Sometimes we need external help because we're just that stuck. That's okay.
Yeah. And Michelle, do you want to say something about that? She got really excited when you said that. So pumping her fist in the air. Yeah, we're gonna start seeing our good friend, mutual friend Frank Berliner uh,
Okay.
around that stuff. But
Cool.
yeah, and there's so much here. So I guess one
Can I
thing.
ask you a couple questions?
Yeah, please, thank you.
Where do you get most stuck with Michelle?
Um, I mean, Michelle could probably say this, but I think my themes are like appreciation, the little kindnesses thing.
Meaning you're
I'll,
wanting that from her and you're not getting it?
yeah,
Yeah.
I just want to thank you, or like eye
Yeah.
contact and a little like air smooch, like any sign that she cares and noticed
Mhm.
something I did. And
And is that what your fights are about? Is that kind of complaint of her?
well, this is just one of the like main points for me. I'm
Yeah.
sure she has her own list, but I think we communicate reasonably well about that. Like I
Mhm.
express like, hey, did you even notice I did that? Like, could
Yeah.
you express something? And she's like, okay. I mean, there is some sense of obligation, like you referred to before, where I'm putting her in the position where it's not necessarily fun to express
Yeah.
appreciation because I'm asking for it. But I also don't really want to not ask for it because I don't want to be in a place where it's sort of like I'm doing a lot of things because I love doing nice things, but then there's no appreciation and it becomes this sort of, what do you call it? Like idiot compassion comes to mind, but there's some sort of, it's not a mutual.
Doesn't feel mutual to you,
thing.
reciprocal. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
what else do we argue about? Do you want to come on? She's processing. But yeah, what I mean, appreciation is a big one. I think, we traveled this summer to her, can I talk about this? To her best friend's wedding. And this was a big deal for her, like me, because we both didn't have money often to be able to go to weddings. So both of us have missed like 75% of our dear friends' weddings historically. So we went to Spain, middle of the pandemic, to this beautiful wedding. And I felt like, and this totally 100% goes back to my father. I felt like a piece of lawn furniture. I felt like a cardboard cutout. Like, here's my boyfriend. I'll stick him in the corner and then I'm going to go off and do my stuff. So, when I was a kid, my dad would like invite me over to something. I didn't grow up with my dad. I grew up with my mom.
Yep.
He was wonderful and loving, and, my dad would be so proud to show me off to people, but he honestly never was curious about me or my life and didn't know anything about my life. And it was just this superficial thing.
Yeah.
So my reaction to that was like, I don't want to hang out with my dad.
Yeah.
So with Michelle, I felt like, okay, I just went halfway across the world and, there's a language barrier as well. And so I just felt kind of isolated and ignored, and like there was no natural.
And did you express that to her?
Like
in that way, kind of, because that's a very responsible way of saying it. I feel isolated, ignored.
I mean, I'm sure I didn't express it. I'm sure I expressed all of that at various times, but I'm sure it came up like, why don't you like stand with me or hug me or want to dance with me, or why don't, and at various points I got super angry and aggressive about it. Like I remember,
which is
her ignoring me several times at the party and just like me basically storming off and at the same time making sure she got on the bus. Like there was still like a tie. There was still the standing for three, but it was like incredibly tenuous. And her way to relate to me being livid was to give me space to process. And of course, the entire time what I wanted was for her to come over and be like, I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Can I offer just a couple thoughts there, reflections?
Please.
I think I always try to help couples get at the core of the issue, right? Which is, sure, you felt isolated, cast out, ignored, blown off, like you don't care about me or whatever. At the core of it, though, there's a feeling, right, that is going on. And I can imagine the feeling is something like hurt. I feel hurt.
Yeah.
I just feel hurt.
Right.
My feelings are getting hurt over here.
Yeah.
And we don't do a great job of just communicating the kind of essence of it, the core of it. Yeah. We make it an elaborate kind of mixture of a lot of complaints and all these things instead of just saying, I just feel really hurt over here.
Yeah.
Because I imagine Michelle could hear I'm hurt more than she could hear the array of all the things she did wrong.
I agree with that. I do think there were moments, at least, where I expressed hurt, but it could have been in a larger context of me expressing it neurotically and many other times.
Yeah.
And
look,
even those times when I was nakedly like vulnerable, like about it, there was a sense of like, you're kind of needy,
Yeah. Yeah. And then she has to own why that's triggering for her when you get anxious or needy, or because we're all needy, by the way. And usually the more avoidant partner actually is in some ways the needier person. Their needs are just repressed, by the way. Anyway,
I hope she's needy because I really want to be there for her. I love neediness.
Yeah. Well,
not like attachment, icky neediness, but I love.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that love. I love love.
It's good for a more distant, quiet partner to keep getting in touch with. They actually do have relational needs. That's really good for them. but it's hard for them. And if you understood her history and where she comes from, you'd get why that's so difficult for her, or why that's kind of off the map, you know? Anyway, back to just, if you can get good at, couples need to get good at expressing the underlying core feeling or emotion instead of the list of things. It's just, I'm kind of feeling sad. I'm feeling hurt, feeling alone. That's all. That's all I want you to know.
And
And then the
if
other person hopefully
if
can, their heart can open, they can empathize and start to learn. What did I do or not do? You know?
and if the Michelle, welcome. You're like a celebrity in this conversation now. We've been talking around you for 20 minutes.
Nice to meet you, Michelle.
My ears are burning. Just kidding.
Yeah, Jayson, Michelle, Jayson. So just coming back again and again to the very simple kind of vulnerable experience of hurt is what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm curious, Michelle, how would that have been if Waylon at the wedding, after, during, whenever, just said, you know, honey, I just feel hurt over here. And I know you're with your family, you're with your friend, and he could empathize at the same time. He could say, look, I know you're got a full plate here at the wedding. There's all these people you want to connect with. This is so cool for you. And I just want to let you know, I'm at the same time, I'm hurt over here. I'm just curious how that would have been for you.
So I was able to empathize in the fact that it was half Spanish and half French.
Mm.
So that's why there were two different languages going. He's kind of better at French than I am. But obviously, I was seeing my Spanish friends who we used to live back together in China after however many years, right? So it was an important moment and
Totally.
connection, as you were just stating. But and that's kind of what I told him is that I felt that it went from 0 to 100.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't really feel that there was a buildup into something because I didn't hear anything, right? So
you just hear the 100
having dinner, like it was amazing during the day. Like he was so supportive and taking pictures, you know, like he gave me my moment with the bride and to be with her because I was a maid of honor and such. But once we were at dinner, I felt that we were connecting. I felt that I was grabbing his hand. We were actually having a conversation. We were actually enjoying dinner. They did a whole vegan thing for us, you know, like, so I felt that we were being seen and heard and we were connecting again. But then after that, when the dance party began, we danced for a little together, but I felt like I wanted to dance more with obviously the girls and, you know, like it was my thing. And I have a full on expression, obviously being Latin American, to dance and full on, like,
yeah, like go for it.
He tried and he would, you know, like, and he has his own thing, but I feel that at the end of the day, we are pandemic couple. So we haven't had the opportunity to be outside of our bubble with other people as well. And I think that's another layer.
It's another layer. Absolutely. That's stressful. Yeah. Yeah. I just a suggestion for the two of you is if there's a way, again, just getting at the core feeling, whether you agree with it or not is irrelevant. It's their feeling, right? It matters.
I love that because it's not about me judging whether her feeling is right or worthy.
No, it's just valid. What she's feeling, right?
Yeah, it's valid.
It's valid. And we validate that by saying that makes sense, that you feel that way, especially knowing who you are and all that. It actually has to make sense for us to say that makes sense and mean it. But if you can really get each other's core kind of felt experience, that goes a long way in just understanding what it's like to be the other person. It's less about trying to get them over to your side or, you know, get them to see something they can't see given who they are. But you could, Michelle, you also could have, just like Waylon could have empathized with you maybe more strongly, you could have also empathized with him. Like, hey, I know this is probably awkward for you. You probably feel kind of alone. You're kind of a fish out of water over here. That's probably stressful. You're probably wanting to just hang out with me or more connection with me. And I'm not available for that. There's things you can do also to help soothe his anxiety a little bit. Just by seeing in him, because he's different than you, right? The more you two can get you're wired differently, the better it's going to go.
The more that we can get that we're wired differently, and that would apply to almost every couple ever. I mean, I'm sure some couples are quite similar in their individual.
They're similar, but they'll polarize over time, especially under stress. So yeah,
Right.
my wife and I are wired differently. I need different things than she needs. She doesn't need what I need, vice versa.
Well, thank you for that. And hopefully, yeah, we're happy to take advantage of this conversation to get free counseling out of you. But hopefully this is helpful for people to see a couple be genuine or vulnerable and see you kind of do it. This was my hope, was see you actually practice this stuff and remind us of the principles. And Michelle and I this was my feeling with this book. This book should not be sold singly. It needs to be sold in pairs so that couples can read it together in bed, or read it to each other, I guess, singly, or the audiobook, because it's such a good, I keep thinking this needs to be like a Duolingo app, like where you go through all the stages with a couple.
Nice.
And you get different scores, like 0 would be the best. Yeah. And it's so helpful, man. I really, I'm going to do everything Elephant can to make sure folks know about this, because like I said in the beginning, like with home ec or whatever, this is foundational to having healthy relationships, not just in romantic, but colleagues, family.
I'm with you. Yep.
I mean, honestly, like I've had a gift and privilege of so many amazing mentors and teachings in my life, and I've never had this. So, and I kind of kick myself when I read this, because you live here. We both live in Boulder and know each other. Yeah. It's so good, man.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And thanks for your courage, you two as a couple, because we couples tend to hide out in their problems, and all couples have problems.
Right.
All couples have challenges. All couples have conflict. No one's above this stuff. And
Right.
so to see a couple just be courageous, to just be honest, like, yeah, we struggle too. Like, thank you. It's very, very freeing for people, I think.
I think one thing that I'm sure you've written about it, but if you haven't, please write about it on Elephant and we'll share it. But is like letting go of the honeymoon reference point, because I think what this book gives me is some sense of like little baby deer, shaky legs confidence that we can get through conflict and get to an even better place that's richer and deeper and fuller than the honeymoon. Because I think whenever we're in conflict, I think of the honeymoon. I'm like, why couldn't we just things be simple again,
Yeah. And that's really normal, by the way, to want to go back to the honeymoon. But the honeymoon was a fantasy. It was, both people were infatuated. When we're infatuated, we put people on pedestals and we actually don't see their shadow and their dark side, because we're not living with them yet. We haven't joined finances yet. We haven't seen their dirty laundry yet. We haven't seen how they live and take care of themselves. And then all of a sudden we start to see it, and we wake up and get sober, and it's like, holy shit, you're difficult. Whoa.
Yeah. Oh my God. You have dirty laundry all over your basement or whatever it is.
Yeah. One person's neat. One person's messy. Like, one person has debt. One person has money. Like, it's just, it's nonstop. Right. And that's reality. And I want couples to be in reality, because it makes for better relationships.
Quote of the day.
Jayson, how would you go about a next step? So we have this year a new set of weddings that are on the rise, and either mutual friends or, in this case, another like best friend of mine. And I know that it has been we're both feeling. It's kind of like that pressure point, and it's kind of uncomfortable, and we're having to make the tough decisions of like, do you really want me there? Do you really want me to go? Do you really want me to be a part of this? Like, this is what I'm hearing, right? And then for me going like, they're my friends. I want you to be there, right? Like it's important for me
Mhm.
that they get to meet you and that you guys also create a relationship.
Yeah. So what's a good next step? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. How would we go about it? Because I
Yeah.
feel that it's kind of like leaning into the comfortableness of it and doing it and maybe stumbling up along the way again is the only way, because it's
Yeah.
what will continue to give us the guidelines of figuring out again who we are and surrounded with people that we love. Always it's kind of like for both of us, I feel like it's and for everyone really going to weddings, it's kind of like you are a fish out of your own bubble because you're like just put in this situation that doesn't really happen, but that's why it can be so magical as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved what you said there about let's not shy away from going and like kind of engaging again because we need to learn. That's sort of what I heard, which I think is really smart. It's like, look, if we want to get stronger as a couple, we need to keep going into challenges like this, like a wedding again, and let's see it, let's do it differently. And it sounds like you're already talking about it, which is huge. Some couples wouldn't even talk about it. They would just go to the wedding and another kind of difficult experience would happen.
Yeah.
If you can keep planning, and here's just a couple questions I would invite you to ask each other is, what would work? How can this be a win for you? What would it feel like, and what would it look like if it was an awesome experience for you? Well, it would look like you came over to me 3 times. It looked like we danced together. It looks like I gave you space. It looks like, but you guys could actually like start to paint the picture of how would it feel and what would it look like for the other person, and then how can I support you in making that a reality? How can I have your back? How can I behave in a way where you feel like I've got your back at the wedding? Knowing that I'm going to be preoccupied with all my friends or, whatever, I'm going to be preoccupied with work. Knowing that the variables are there, how can I really behave in a way that supports who you are without, of course, without betraying myself? Because remember, I'm standing for 3. So I'm not going to give myself up here. I want to include myself. So that would be one of my suggestions. And then I would suggest the other thing is create 1 or 2 agreements, just 1 or 2. Keep it really simple, not 10, 1 or 2. We agree that when the shitty thing happens or the conflict does occur, because it will, this is our plan. Have a plan, right? And then when it actually is in the moment, you got to go back to your agreement and say, hey, we had an agreement. Remember, I know it's kind of not good timing, but we had an agreement. So can we?
It's not good timing.
Because you're
You're at a wedding or you're talking to someone.
drama or whatever has just happened.
So like sometimes the reason people break agreements is because it's not good timing. Like,
I see. Right. Hey, I'm in the middle of something.
hey,
Let's
now's
deal
not
with
the time. I'm in the middle of Thanksgiving dinner. Now's not the time.
it. Right. Right.
So be clear on your agreements. It could be like we agree to at night process this, or we agree to step out of the wedding for 30 minutes and deal with it, or whatever.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah, I love
It's
that you guys
challenging.
go in and I mean, it's all of these amazing but painful experiences that you two have this opportunity to get to become the couple that you probably know in your hearts that you can be. But it's going to require this adversity and these kind of bumping up against each other. I mean, you're early in your relationship, right?
Yeah.
It took my wife and I 3 years to get to finally get a little better at conflict. 3 years.
Right. With you and your partner, with your wife?
And we were both psychotherapists.
Right. Wow. Okay. That's
It takes
helpful.
time.
One thing for me as the communicator who, even if I'm the guy, I often feel like I'm more vulnerable. Is like I feel like I'm the one. So this is a question. I feel like I'm the one often saying, she's like, hey, so are we gonna go to this, wedding and get the tickets? Like she's asking that again and again. And every single time I'm like, is it gonna be different? Are you gonna pay attention to me? Like I don't want to enter into the same battle and get obliterated again. And by obliterated, I don't just mean me, I mean our relationship.
You get in this conflict or it doesn't feel good. Yeah.
So I often feel like I think almost every day, I feel like I'm the one bringing stuff up and communicating. And if I didn't do it, it wouldn't happen. So, there was a brief moment, ironically, Michelle went to the kitchen to get us hot water and stuff. But where you said, both people have to be committed. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that part felt key to me. Both people have to show up or be willing to, like, if someone doesn't show up, that tells you a lot about them or the relationship you're in.
Yeah. Yeah, and you feel scared that maybe she at times isn't willing. Is that right? She doesn't want to bring it up or talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think that's your communication style, to bring things like that up.
Yeah, will you tell him what you think about what he's saying, Michelle? What's your response here?
So I know that I grew up in a household that did not communicate about hard things, like unless it was critical, like it had to be done. And I feel like, obviously, like through Elephant, but also his Buddhist upbringing and his mom, and like all these things, he's been leaning towards vulnerability for far longer than I have.
Uh-huh.
So I just get, like, every time I get vulnerable, I get teary. Like, that's just a given. And that's like my response. Which
is so beautiful. I mean, she tears up at the drop of a hat, like just mentioning her father, who is not with us, tears up. Like, her vulnerability is right there.
Yeah, so just stay with her here.
Yeah. But so yeah, when I hear this, going back to your question, yeah, I don't, it's not important. Like, that's the biggest thing. Like, I hear it and I understand it, and it's kind of like something that I just make a choice to shift inside, and I know that it is going to be a challenge, but it needs to be done. So for me, it's like, it's a given.
It needs to be done. What do you mean?
That we need to go to the wedding. We need to have that experience again. And mainly, like, I've tried to sort of comfort, and we've spoken about this. We have actually taken the time to speak about how it would be different, how it would feel different. I've already shared the fact that I now understand what he means by not feeling left alone, or kind of like lonely, or if just checking in and making sure that, like, he has a drink, or he has had a conversation. Has he connected with someone? Is he having a good time? Did he like the cake? I don't know, stuff like that.
And what's the most important thing to him?
That that I'm there, that we're together, and that he's safe.
Right. That's kind of the one thing you need to track, right? Is just, hey, how you doing? How are we doing? It's less about the drink or talking to other people. It's like, hey, how are we? Is my space over there? I know I'm dancing a lot. How is that for you? Like, can you imagine what that might feel like if you did that at the next wedding? Look at him. What might that do for Waylon if you did that?
His anxiety is going to come down.
Yeah.
He's going to feel safer and more included, or part of.
Yeah. Is that something you can do, do you think?
Yes.
Correct answer.
So look at him and tell him that.
Yeah.
I can, I how to say this? I can ask you how you're doing and make sure, not make sure, but just um, be there to tell me if you are actually feeling good or not about this and how you're feeling. I'm rambling. I'm like, I don't know.
I think you get the idea though, right?
Yes.
How would that feel to you, Waylon, if she just checked in?
Like manna from heaven. I mean, yeah, that would be everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So simple, but it's not easy for her. Like it honestly, it's been reading this book has been so helpful again, because it honestly, the whole, you're going to have to remind me, but it's like we're having different arguments, like different conversations. Like she doesn't even understand what I'm asking for. And then she kind of blames me for being needy or whatever it is, which I think I am sometimes. But it's like we can't even have the same, we're not even clear what the need is sometimes. And I think right now it was, thank you. So thank you for that. And again, I want to make sure that this is helpful for people watching. So put in your comments and all that. We're not trying to just take advantage here, but we are trying to do it live because that is real. It's not theoretical.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you two are just like any other couple trying to navigate how do we do kind of a crunchy experience better next time. I mean,
By
it's
crunchy,
very
kind of difficult, like
difficult kind of, it wasn't a high five win home run for us.
Right.
It's a little hard sometimes. How do we do it better?
Yeah, we had a lot of high five win moments, but overall we had if you were scoring us, it would be like a fair number of A's and a fair number of F's. Like, we definitely uncovered what we weren't good at, for sure.
Yeah.
Where we weren't on the same page. So there are some comments here. I am a licensed therapist. I bought the book 10 minutes into the interview. Can't wait to read it. Molly's mother just commented, thank you guys for modeling how to do this. Very brave of you. YouTube comment, feeling left and not appreciated in a relationship is a big thing. Feelings like that originate from the past. The inner child needs attention. Thanks for sharing this. I can totally relate to that. Not sure quite what they're referring to. My dad was the same without any bad intention. Oh, probably the cardboard cutout kind of thing. Yeah. Thanks for helping me realize that. So it's bringing up some stuff. And that's my goal, is that, man, if we can all bring our conflict to some upaya, to some skillful means to work with it instead of running away from it or exacerbating it.
Yeah. I have one comment about that, which is to the listeners, which is when you avoid conflict with the most important people in your life, you're creating an inner conflict inside of you every single time.
Yeah.
Becomes a withhold, becomes a resentment, it becomes something you're not saying. It's like a kink in the energy exchange in the relationship. So if you want a relationship where there's lots of kinks in the hose of your connection and the energy is kind of shut down and contracted, be my guest. But most people don't want that. They want a place where it's safe and okay to express truth, express uncomfortable feelings, express complaints. And yeah, skillful means, like Waylon's saying, is pretty key. And we're still, there's no way to not trigger someone. You can't do it. People are we're animals. We're social mammals. We perceive threats all the time. We're going to get triggered. It's how do we handle ourselves and each other when we get triggered? That's kind of a big mover for people.
And thank you for voicing that, because I feel like it is a benefit for people to know that they are not alone. That this is, because that is something that, like in your mind, you start just to wonder, like exactly what you were saying. Like, oh, is it him? Is it me?
Mm-hmm.
Did I choose wrong? Like, like, should I let this go and find someone else? Or, like all these, thoughts and kind of like pressures just start to arise.
Yeah, fears, doubts, all of it. That's all
Oh,
gonna
it's
happen.
just a hypothetical. She's never had that thought. She's just trying to be helpful to people.
No,
I guarantee she's had that thought, right?
No, that's been a big thing. I think I read it in your book, like in the first chapter or something. Like when things get really hard, I don't view it as a threat, but you describe it as a threat. I often say, well, maybe we should part ways. Like this isn't,
Right.
when things are really not working, my conclusion is like, I need to find someone who wants to communicate, and I need to find someone who wants to be affectionate. But I would have conflicts with that someone.
You would. And it's okay to have those thoughts. I wouldn't air them with her though.
Yeah.
And
that was helpful.
In to the relationship of hearing this over and over and over again has just made me feel like I started to believe it.
Yeah.
And then I start to back up.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is an important point. There's vulnerability here, right? It doesn't feel good to hear that a lot. And then of course you're going to pull away. So I think, Waylon, you get the impact there that it's sort of like your sitting meditation practice. It's like, let the thoughts fly kind of, but watch them cruise on by, and I wouldn't bite onto them and then air them. Right. I don't recommend that.
After reading that in your first chapter or wherever that is, I said to Michelle, I'm reading this book and she knows you or of you. And I'm never going to say that. I'm not going to say that again. I made that commitment and I haven't said it since. I don't think I have. Oh, did I really? Well, I accept that responsibility if I did say it.
But same as practice, and it's just like it reminds me of yoga, and that's why in meditation, and it's just like showing up and doing it again and doing it again and doing it again, and it's not trying to be perfect, but just opening yourself up to feeling the change in your body and your mind and your energy, and
I love the yoga reference because it reminds me of how I see love, which is love as a practice. It's not some, I just love you and it's easy now. People mistake that for infatuation in the beginning. Love to me is a practice of, it's actually really hard to love someone, like all of them in a marriage, say, or in a family. It can be difficult because they trigger the hell out of you, right? But that's the practice, is when my wife brings parts of herself I don't like, my job is to learn how to, I don't have to still like it, but to learn how to love her through that regardless, right? And that's, sometimes I don't want to do that. It's hard.
And it doesn't feel good to you.
Yeah. But I'm not going to, exactly. And I'm not going to air it to her and say, hey, I don't like you. I don't love you here. I'm just going to keep working with myself. Like, okay, how do I get bigger? How can my heart get bigger here?
How do you put that into the three though? So of saying something like that, like the you, the her, and the us, or the you in this case.
Yeah, in terms of standing for three.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm taking a stand for someone and their success doesn't mean I have to like how they do it, how they do their journey sometimes. I can still take a stand for them and what they're about and what they want to do with their life and who they are in their heart of hearts. Because often what we're not liking or loving about someone is usually strategies. Whoa, you there?
Yeah, we're here. It got a little...
Yeah, a little sci-fi there. Anyway, I was saying sometimes what we're not liking is strategy of the other person's got a weird strategy. Like they're being the nice girl or they're being the compliant one or something. I'm talking about loving someone's essence really and who they are. That can be hard.
So we've been over an hour. I don't want to keep you too long, but it's deeply appreciated. I think we have a solid audience hanging out. Did you have anything you wanted to share or ask or bring up? No? Yeah, so I guess one final question around, if I may, around that. Don't threaten to leave every time the going gets tough.
Yep.
is a lot of people do break up. And I mean, you kind of said this again, but I don't think I'm quite getting it through my thick skull, is what is an actual ground or sane good ground to say this isn't an equal relationship, this isn't working, like this person isn't either me, I'm not showing up, or the other partner?
Yeah, it's a great question, because we do find ourselves sometimes in relationships where we're asking that question. And if things are hard for too often for too long, that question is going to be a recurring question in our mind, right? Is this good for me? Like, I don't even know if this is going to work. So to me, it's about actions. Are two people willing to do the work? And the work meaning to self-reflect, to take responsibility for their part, to go to coaching or something if they need help, to apply themselves and learn and not pretend like they know how to do this, because clearly you're in the weeds. Like, willingness is the single biggest determinant, I think. Willingness in action, not in words, right? Because everybody says they're willing, but not everybody can follow through that with actions. And actions is what matters. And someone who says they're willing and then doesn't follow it up with actions erodes their own self-trust, as well as erodes the trust of the relationship over time. And they need to understand the impact on the other person is going to eventually get like, wow, I don't trust you. Right?
So as long as we're actively trying,
and there is progress, there is a little bit of progress here and there.
right.
Great. But I always like to say, well, let's say you fire this person and you let go of this relationship. Just know your issues didn't go anywhere. They're coming with you
Right.
into the next relationship.
I love that. That's so good. Wherever you go, there you are, you know?
Totally. Yeah. John Kabat-Zinn. Totally.
Yeah. Love that. Well, Jayson, thank you so much. A reminder to folks, this is the book we're talking about, Getting to Zero, how to work through conflict in your high-stakes relationships. Given that we're engaged, it couldn't have come at a better time, a more meaningful and helpful time. And I think many people will feel the same way. So, Jayson, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Waylon. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for taking it so seriously and
Yeah.
getting that this could help your marriage. And it also is very practical, and it could help a lot of people. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you to all the viewers and listeners.
Yeah. Thanks, viewers.
Jayson,
listeners.
Stick around for 1 sec.
Yep.
But well, you don't have to leave. Molly will let us know when we're not live, which I assume is now, but we'll see.
Yeah, cool. Book